glycol means carbohydrate bonded with lipid molecule with an ester bond. No? So, what's the role of these glycolipids in the cell membrane? It's for cell-to-cell communication. Cell-to-cell communication, for recognition, cell-to-cell recognition. Okay? Now, we have this diagram. So, generally, lipids are of two kinds. You have the simple lipids. Simple lipids, like for example, the neutral fats are composed of fatty acids and glycerol. Example of simple lipids are neutral fats or triglycerides. Are you with me? Example of simple lipids are triglycerides or neutral fats. They are made up only of fatty acids and glycerol. But for complex lipids, you may have this phospholipids or glycolipids. Phospholipids and the glycolipids. Now, the glycolipids consist of fatty acid. Of course, we have the sugar, the glucose or galactose. And there's another molecule, the sphingosine. So that comprises mainly of our glycolipids. Now for sphingolipids, sphingolipids consist of fatty acid. And of course it's sphingosine and phosphate and the choline. Very complex. Fatty acid, sphingosine, phosphate, and choline. Okay, those are some examples. Then we also have the glycerol phospholipids. You have the glycerol and the fatty acid, but they composed of phosphate and alcohol. Phosphate and alcohol. Okay. Now in the membranes, where you can find the membrane? Say this is our cell. This is our cell. This is our membrane. This is the nucleus. Say, for example, in an egg, you remove the shell. You could see a cellophane-like structure. We call that as the cell or the plasma membrane. And the egg white is the cytoplasm, and the yolk is the nucleus. Okay? So you have there. No? Now, in our body cells, you have this outer part called the cell or the plasma membrane, that cellophane-like structure, which consists of lipids. Of course, it's a complex structure. So one component of that membrane is lipid molecule. Okay. Now, there is a aqueous solution, meaning a solution containing water. Complex lipids spontaneously form into a lipid bilayer with a back-to-back arrangement of lipid monolayers. And these lipids in the membrane is described as amphipathic. Amphipathic. Now when we say amphipathic, this consists of the hydrophobic group and hydrophilic group. You have the word phobia. Hydro means water, phobic, phobia, afraid of water. Hydro, water, philic, water lover, philic. Okay. So now this lipid in the membrane is arranged in a back-to-back form, forming now the monolayer. Now actually there are two. Okay, we have here. This is now the picture of the cell membrane or the plasma membrane. And it is described as the fluid-like. So our model is said to be fluid-like. Now, what increases the fluidity of the membrane? I'll discuss that later. No? What makes the membrane fluid-like? Now, the role of the membrane is for, of course, that facilitates in the transport of molecules in and out of the cell, and it passes through the membrane. So, what facilitates the transport is the membrane. Okay? And what is in the membrane? One important component of the membrane is the lipid. Now, by the way, actually, if you try to get the percentage of the membrane components, now membrane consists accordingly 50% protein and 50% lipids. However, how about the other components? Now, some other components are bonded with either lipids or with proteins. Like for example, carbohydrates, like this. This is our carbohydrates. Now, our carbohydrates does not exist singly there in the membrane. It is bonded with either the protein, so you have the glycoprotein, or the lipids. So we have glycolipids. So it's not shown here. Only this one. So if you summarize it, now more or less, membranes consist of 50% protein and 50% lipids, and it would be bonded with other non-lipid and non-protein molecules. Okay. Now this one is composed of one layer. This head here, the balloon-like structure is called the phosphate group, the head part, and the tail part is the lipid part. So this is one layer, and this is another layer. It's back-to-back arrangement. This is one layer, the head and the tail and the head. Are you with me? So it's back-to-back arrangement, the phospholipid bilayer. So there are two layers in the membrane. You have one layer and this another layer. Now what makes it amphipathic is because this phospholipid bilayer consists of the hydrophobic phobia. Where's the hydrophobic portion here? The tail or the head? Okay, the tail part, which is the lipid part. This is the hydrophobic phobia. No? Why? Phobia. Why? Because remember, lipids are insoluble in water. Why? Why they're insoluble again? Because water is polar, lipids are non-polar. Very good. So you have here that the head part is the phosphate and the tail part is the lipid part. So this is the phospholipid. Bi, meaning there are two layers. Are you with me? What makes it bi? Because there are two layers which are arranged of phospholipids which are arranged in a back-to-back arrangement, in a back-to-back form. So you have the head part, which is the hydrophilic, the head, this violet. The balloon-like structures are the phosphate group, the phosphate PO4. These are the phosphate group, this balloon, the head part, and the tail part, which is the lipid form. Okay? So, they are, okay, now this is now the outside of the cell. This is the exterior of the cell, and this is the interior of the cell. Now, the outside and the inside of the cell is surrounded with water. That's why aqueous environment. And you know what? Why are they arranged in a back-to-back form? This phospholipid bilayer. Why? Remember, this is watery here, aqueous. Inside is also aqueous. Why are they arranged in a back-to-back form? Remember, lipids are insoluble, they hydrophobic. They have to be away from the aqueous environment. The word aqua, aqueous. Okay, so they are now in the, or say, away from the aqueous environment. Now, the whole structure of phospholipid facilitates in the transport of small and uncharged particles. Remember, the role of membrane is for the transport of molecules in and out. And of course, the role now of phospholipid bilayer is for the transport of small and uncharged particles. Like for example, water molecules are small and they are said to be uncharged. The charge, though there is partial charge in water molecule, but the overall charge is 0. Say if this is hydrogen, this is water. So this is now water. Now, this one serves as the positive region. This oxygen here serves as the negative region. It's not the structure of water. Now, there is what we call as partial charge here in water. However, the overall charge is 0. So, it can pass through this phospholipid bilayer. Now, will you not ask me why it can pass through water? Remember, lipids are insoluble in water, and why it can pass through this phospholipid bilayer. So, for example, we have this.